Rabindranath Tagore was a renowned Bengali poet, philosopher, musician, playwright, and social reformer. He was born on May 7, 1861, in Calcutta, India, into a prominent family of intellectuals and artists. His father, Rabindranath Tagore, was a prominent social reformer and a leader of the Brahmo Samaj, a Hindu reform movement. Rabindranath was the youngest of his father's 14 children and was homeschooled by his father and other private tutors. As a child, Rabindranath was a voracious reader and showed an early talent for writing poetry. His first collection of poems, titled Bhanusamathakara or Padabali, was published when he was just 16 years old. In 1878, he traveled to England to study law, but he dropped out after a year and returned to India. In 1883, Rabindranath married Mrinalini Devi, and they had 5 children together. During this time, he devoted himself to writing and music, and his literary career took off. His most famous works include Gitanjali, a collection of poems that won him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913, and The Home and the World, a novel that explores the tensions between tradition and modernity in Indian society. Rabindranath was also a social and political activist who worked tirelessly to promote social and cultural reform in India. He was a vocal critic of British colonial rule and advocated for Indian independence. He founded a school in rural Bengal, which became the Visva-Bharati University, where he combined Western education with Indian traditions. In addition to his literary and social work, Rabindranath was also a prolific composer and musician. He composed over 2,000 songs, many of which are still popular in India and Bangladesh today. His music blended Indian classical music with Western harmonies and inspired a new genre of Bengali music called Rabindra Sangeet. Rabindranath Tagore died on August 7, 1941, in Calcutta, leaving behind a legacy as one of India's greatest literary figures and social reformers. His work continues to inspire generations of writers, musicians, and activists around the world. Rabindranath was born into a family of intellectuals and artists. His father, Rabindranath Tagore, was a leader of the Brahmo Samaj, a Hindu reform movement that sought to promote rationalism, ethical living, and social equality. Rabindranath's mother, Sarada Devi, was a devout Hindu who instilled in him a love of religion and spirituality. As a child, Rabindranath was homeschooled by his father and other private tutors. He showed an early talent for writing poetry and composed his first verses at the age of 8. He also learned to play the piano and the sitar, a traditional Indian stringed instrument. His childhood was marked by tragedy when his mother and sister died when he was just 14 years old. In 1878, Rabindranath traveled to England to study law, but he dropped out after a year and returned to India. He became involved in the Brahmo Samaj and began writing and publishing poetry. In 1883, he married Mrinalini Devi, a woman from a wealthy Bengali family, and they had 5 children together. During this time, Rabindranath devoted himself to writing and music. He wrote poetry, plays, essays, and novels, many of which were critical of British colonialism and championed Indian nationalism. He also composed music and performed his own songs, which were popular throughout India. In 1901, Rabindranath founded a school in rural Bengal, which became the Visva-Bharati University. The school combined Western education with Indian traditions, and it attracted students from all over India and the world. Rabindranath himself taught classes and developed a curriculum that emphasized the arts, humanities, and social sciences. In 1913, Rabindranath won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his collection of poems, Gitanjali. The poems were translated into English by Rabindranath himself and became famous throughout the world. The prize brought him international recognition and cemented his reputation as one of India's greatest literary figures. Throughout his life, Rabindranath was a social and political activist who worked tirelessly to promote social and cultural reform in India. He was a vocal critic of British colonial rule and advocated for Indian independence. He also championed women's rights, environmentalism, and religious tolerance. Rabindranath's legacy as a writer, musician, and social reformer continues to inspire generations of people around the world. His works are studied in schools and universities, and his music is still performed and enjoyed today. He remains one of India's most beloved and respected figures, and his contributions to Indian culture and society continue to be celebrated and honored. Rabindranath was not only a prolific writer, poet, and musician but also a talented painter. He began painting in his late 60s and created over 2,000 paintings during the last 3 decades of his life. His paintings were heavily influenced by Indian classical art and traditional Japanese painting. In addition to his literary and artistic achievements, Rabindranath was also a spiritual leader who sought to reconcile Hinduism with modernity. He believed that the true essence of religion was not in dogma or ritual but in the realization of the unity of all things. He wrote extensively on religion and spirituality and gave many lectures and talks on these subjects. Rabindranath was also a prolific correspondent who maintained a vast network of friends, colleagues, and admirers around the world. He exchanged letters with many famous writers and intellectuals of his time, including Mahatma Gandhi, Albert Einstein, and Ezra Pound. Despite his many accomplishments, Rabindranath was a humble and compassionate man who remained committed to his vision of a more just and equitable society. He was deeply committed to education and believed that education was the key to social and cultural progress. He established several schools and educational institutions, including the Sriniketan Institute of Rural Reconstruction, which aimed to promote rural development and self-sufficiency. Rabindranath's impact on Indian culture and society is immeasurable. His works continue to be read, studied, and performed around the world, and his ideas continue to inspire people to work towards a better future. His legacy is a testament to the power of art, literature, and culture to transcend national and cultural boundaries and promote universal values of peace, justice, and human dignity.